Welcome into the Warzone Sports Network. I am your host, Tony Tucker, joined by Joe Morley and Mike on the mic. And this is the NFC West divisional preview and prediction show, our final one of the 8 divisions. We left it for last for one reason, because it's the best. And what if I told you the only quarterback no, you know what? I'll save that for this show. Let's just get into this shit.
Then we on the radio, coming to your locale. Got into the third round, better bring the smoke now. Step into the war zone. 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 Friday night war zone. Friday night war zone. Step into the 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 war zone. Friday night war zone. Friday night war zone.
See that dance?
I love that. I love that intro. I love the intro. Let's just get into this shit. Let's just get into this shit.
Well, because I was going to say something about Matthew Stafford, but we will save it for when we get to the Rams. Because when I look at this division, and a lot of people are saying we could have 4 playoff teams from the NFC West. We've never seen that before. We've got this, this new alignment. And I love where Matthew Stafford is at. We are going to get into all of that. As I said, Joe and Mike, hosts of shows, the Friday Night Wars. Joe has every Wednesday the Raiders Allegiance. I believe tomorrow the show Nuts and Bolts with Mike. And I will be on there in a little preview of the Chargers and Washington football team. And there are so many amazing shows. Get locked in, hit the subscribe button, join the Warzone Sports Network, reach out for collaborations. Let's talk about the NFC West. Which team are we starting with, Michael, on the
We're
microphone?
starting in the Bay Area with the San Francisco 49ers. Here are the 49ers' key departures and key additions. Not too much going out. We saw Tevin Coleman head to New York. He's with the Jets now. Solomon Thomas is going to Las Vegas, right, Joe? He's with you guys?
Yes, sir.
And Kendrick Bourne is heading out, and he's a New England Patriot now. And when you look at the key additions, we have Kerr, who is coming in and playing the interior defensive line for them, helping out, probably replacing Solomon Thomas as a depth piece. Alex Mack, probably one of their biggest free agency acquisitions over the last couple of years. Alex Mack's one of the best centers in football. I wanted to bring myself on the screen just to say that. I'm excited for this offensive line and what they're going to do. And then, of course, they drafted Trey Lance, a future franchise quarterback, 3rd overall. Josh Norman was just recently signed. Is he going to play that Richard Sherman role we saw Richard Sherman play over the last couple of years? Still to be told. Don't think he's as good as Richard Sherman, but we will see. And then Trey Sermon also came over in the draft. I wanted to note that because Trey Sermon's best friend is now Alex Mack. They were 6-10, finished 4th last season. Guys, do you think they got better or worse this offseason?
So here's the biggest key addition is that the injury report for the 49ers is relatively low to start the season because this team was winning games last year with CJ Beathard and Nick Mullins. So if they have as the backup this year to go to Trey Lance, and I believe that will be sooner rather than later. I know that there's some easy games early on for Jimmy G, but when you get into the meat of that schedule and it starts to look bad and he's maybe not performing up to snuff, we're going to see Trey Lance early on. But the key additions, when you go out and, like you said, you add a center, they still got Trent Williams. This offensive line is going to be beefy, and I like the Josh Norman pickup. Joe, what do you got?
Hey, for the 49ers, the key addition is not having MetLife Stadium on their schedule. They don't have to go to MetLife Stadium. They played 2 games over there. That's where they lost every single player on their roster last year. Some of them blamed the turf over there, but they don't have to go there. I think the 49ers being healthy, like Tony said, makes them a better team. It was very impressive to watch the 49ers last year. And I do not like giving the 49ers a lot of credit, but I will give them this. They lost so many guys last year, and they still went out there and competed. They still went out there and won 6 games, even though everybody thought their season was completely done. And that's up to the coach, and that's Shanahan right there. The way he got his team to play with all these injuries, even with the backups. That's why I'm very impressed with the 49ers. And they went from the Super Bowl to a bunch of injuries to now to where they are today. And they added weapons. Woo! Yeah, 49ers, here we go.
I actually had a low win projection on them last year, and that was because the year before I noticed that a lot of players, specifically the secondary, overperformed what I expected them to do by a wide margin. I didn't know if it was a fluke or not. But I will say this, in the year following, I don't take too much credit for, predicting their win projection off one win. I think I had them winning 7 or something like that, just because of all the injuries. But those guys that I had question marks about in the secondary, were they going to repeat their performance? Even in a 6-10 season, they repeated their performance. They showed that this defense can hold people in games, even down, their first 3 stars on the defense. So I have a lot more belief in the 49ers this year. I preached that all year last year, that I didn't know if they're going to be able to repeat getting that kind of performance out of those guys, that it wasn't expected, and they did. So I have nothing to worry about with the 49ers. I think they're going to be a wild card team, or they're going to be in the picture for the wild card / winning this division.
Just tell Norman to stay away from Derrick Henry, and he'll be all right.
Oh, yeah. Also, not just Trent Williams, not just Alex Mack. They also got big Mike McGlinchey over there on that offensive line. They have 3 Pro Bowlers and potentially all-pro level linemen on one offensive line with Trey Sermon coming into the backfield. It's going to be exciting for those guys.
Yeah, and that's what I'm interested to see how this offense is going to work, because once you have Trey Lance get in there, who I believe is a more capable passer than Jimmy G is, right? Mm-hmm. Like, Jimmy's fine, and he wins a lot of games, and he gets credit for winning those games. But Kyle Shanahan has won games with everybody, right? Mm-hmm. So now what if you had somebody who just elevates the position and takes everything that we love about, Lamar Jackson, and then complements that with the ability to throw the ball already. We can see that in his offense, in this sort of zone run scheme or whatever it is. I'm interested to see Trey Sermon. If Mostert stays healthy this year, Kittle stays healthy, this team can be very dangerous once they get Trey Lance in the backfield. Are we ready to go to highlighted players for the 49ers?
Let's do it, Tony.
Okay. As I was talking about the offense and what I'm most excited about seeing, and that's Brandon Ayuk taking a step up. He was very good for them last year. A lot of that was due to the fact that they had some injuries. Deebo Samuel is a beast. The dude's like 6'3" and fast and is going to demand targets. And then you have George Kittle. Some people think could, be approaching like that all-time tight end status if he can string together like 4 healthy seasons. He has that ability to just put up monster numbers. So we shall see if, does he just become a complement piece to that offense and put them over the top with Samuel and Kittle, and when Trey Sermon comes on, Trey Lance running the ball, throwing the ball. So I want to see how he adds to it, because you can use him in so many different ways.
I chose Fred Warner, and the reason is he is the captain of this defense. And don't get me wrong, don't get any of us wrong. We know that the strength of this team is still their defense. Their defense is going to be top 5. Their defense is going to be top 3 potentially, depending on the health thing. But Fred Warner has all his guys around him. I also selected it because I wanted to throw this out there. The take I've been sitting on for a little while. Bobby Wagner was kind of the guy of the last generation. Maybe you can argue Luke Kuechly and those kind of guys. I think for this decade, the 2020s in history, Fred Warner is going to go down as the best linebacker for the entire decade. That's how talented this guy is. That's how special this guy is. He's built like a massive run stop, get in the trenches linebacker, but can fly like a coverage guy. I love Fred Warner. He's everything that you'd want in a middle linebacker. He's a captain of the defense as well. So that's who I chose to highlight, just because of how important he is to this team. Joe.
Great. Leave me, after you talk about one of the greatest linebackers in the game today, then you go, all right, who's your highlighted player? Trey Sermon is mine, because you already know. Everybody knows how the San Francisco offense is. Doesn't really matter who the quarterback is. They don't really rely on the quarterback. You saw Jimmy G play a playoff game and only make 9 passes, something like that, a couple years ago. It's the running backs in this system, and the Shanahan offense, all the way back to his dad, Mike Shanahan. There used to be able to plug and play any running backs, but Trey Sermon, I don't think they've ever had a running back that's like Trey Sermon that fits this offense perfectly. I know he's a backup right now, but I think he's going to come in, and because Mostert has a tendency of getting hurt every once in a while and going down. So Trey Sermon, I think, is going to be a big one. I should have said Javon Kinlaw, because I'm interested to see him in the second year of his development and with Nick Bosa back. But I think the running game for San Francisco is the make or break of this team. They go where this running game goes, and Trey Sermon's going to take him to that promised land.
So 2 things real quick before we move on. One is Raw Mind Sports, who's a huge 49ers fan, is his team preview is coming out soon, and he says some really wild stuff about Fred Warner that backs up what Mike was saying. And also, I believe it was Kyle Shanahan was the offensive coordinator for RG3 and Alfred Morris when they were both rookies. And you go back and look at what they did. I believe that Trey Lance and Sermon are both more capable NFL players than those two. And he won the Heisman at Baylor. Like, I feel like I'm, besmirching the name of him, but it's right there. Yes, I do remember Patrick Willis. They had
Patrick Willis over Fred Warner, or is Fred Warner better than Patrick Willis right now?
In today's game of football, I want Fred Warner. Everything that Patrick Willis was good at in that age of football is just a penalty today. Yeah. So, I mean, Patrick Willis, even in coverage, is not the kind of guy that Fred Warner is. I actually always liked Navarro Bowman as like a coverage guy in that linebacker core back in the day, and Takeo Spikes. That was a fun linebacker group that the 49ers had when Patrick Willis was in his prime.
Yeah, and they wanted winners, and they couldn't get them.
Yeah, winners. I personally would take Fred Warner just because the ability to drop back into coverage like a safety, at the same time come up and help in the run game. It's something that only guys like Bobby Wagner or Luke Kuechly or freak of nature guys that we've seen before in the history of football.
I can't wait for you guys to hear what Rob Mines said about Fred Warner and his coverage ability. It is off the wall insane. Let's move on to our next team in the NFC West.
We're heading to Arizona, Tony. We're heading to Arizona. Switch the graphics here. Get the additions and subtractions up. Bam. Key departures. Dan Arnold. He's heading to Carolina to help them out with their tight end group. Ian Thomas is the guy with him, not Logan Thomas. Don't get him confused. Both tight ends, both named Thomas, different people. Hassan Reddick, kind of a underrated, under the radar free agency moves. He's going to Carolina also. He's going to help out their defense a ton. He's been good for Arizona. Kenyon Drake, also a Las Vegas Raider nowadays. Patrick Peterson, obviously the longtime corner, probably an all-time great of their franchise. He's heading to Minnesota to help out the Vikings in the twilight of his career. Then you go down to the additions, and you got to like it. There's a mix of youth, and there's a mix of veteran leadership in this key additions section. A.J. Green, obviously, a longtime Cincinnati Bengals wide receiver. Rodney Hudson, who's been one of the better centers in the league for the last forever, since I can remember. Of course, in the twilight of his career as well. J.J. Watt, also veteran, all-time great, locked-in Hall of Famer. James Conner has been putting in work for Pittsburgh over the last couple of years. They picked up Matt Prater, who's another guy who's just been in the league forever and been consistent. And we talk about the youth coming in. Zavin Collins was their first-round pick. He's coming in to play middle linebacker, and I think he is set to start at middle linebacker, which changes my take-up. I had Defensive Rookie of the Year going to Jamin Davis because he's starting in Washington. Zavin Collins is going to compete for that award, in my opinion, now just because he's going to start every snap in that middle linebacker spot for the Cardinals. And then Rondell Moore, the speedy wide receiver that Arizona fans are excited to see get out in the field along with A.J. Green and DeAndre Hopkins. That is the key departures and key additions for the Cardinals. 8-8 last year. Think they win another game or two, guys?
So we'll get to that prediction stuff in a second. I just want to say, you said there's a good mix of it. The first 5 guys on there, to me, could be done-ish, right? Like, can J.J. Watt play a full season and still be that productive? How much does A.J. Green have left in the tank? We saw, was it the offensive line or was it James Conner last year in Pittsburgh? Like, a lot of the additions that they made have major question marks next to them. So I look at it and it's like, although, yes, there's some name, recognition that go with these additions, I just don't know how effective they're going to be. I really like the kid Rondell Moore, what we saw in preseason. I didn't know much about him coming out. People were hyped on him going into the draft. But in preseason, I was like, okay. I ended up snagging him in a few fantasy leagues, which I'm excited about that. But for real football, I think that he could sort of be a nice little slot option for Kyler in that area, and maybe even take a little attention and open things up for DeAndre Hopkins or AJ Green, like we said, if there is anything left in the tank. Joe, what do you got on these Arizona Cardinals?
I'm with you. There's a lot of ifs, especially on the guys that they brought in. Like you said, AJ Green. We all thought he was not the same AJ Green last year when he was in Arizona. James Conner, who they're happy about having as a backup, he was the 32nd ranked offense with Pittsburgh last year. The worst rushing attack last year was James Conner and his team. and you added him. Rodney Hudson comes over from the Raiders, great center, one of the best centers in the league. But the rest of that offensive line is like, ugh. Like we've been talking about Arizona and Kyle Murray for like 2 years and saying they need to protect him, and they still don't go out there and do enough on that offensive line. J.J. Watt, you got, like Tony said, is J.J. Watt 100%? Is he going to go out there? Then on the other side of J.J. Watt is Chandler Jones, who everybody would agree, when 100% healthy, is a top 3 defensive end in the game. But he's coming back from a major injury. And so now you have 2 defensive ends that you went at the top of their game. Amazing. But both of them have a lot of question marks, need to come back. But the guy I think, the guy I like at the safety position is Budda Baker, and he makes or breaks that defense. Come week 1, we'll find out how he does with that big extension. But I don't know. I'm not sold on Arizona. Every time I look at them and I look, I just think they're staying the same. They're staying the same. There's nothing that improved that made me jump out and go, okay, Arizona did it again. They're jumping up again. Nothing this offseason, nothing has made me believe that Arizona has made a step forward in this division.
Yeah, and it's kind of sucks because they're in this division. I mean, this team is still loaded with talent, and we could see all the talent that's on the team individually. It's just whether or not they can put it together as a team. We've seen them fall apart at the end of games, but we've seen them also overachieve at the end of games. Even miracles we saw last year happen with DeAndre Hopkins. So the talent is there. I feel like they're going to be a little bit better than last year, not because of the veteran guys that they brought in or the guys they drafted or anything like that. Kyler Murray's progression is going this way, going straight up. He improved a lot in year 2. He got a lot more efficient with the football, made a lot more less costly decisions to put the ball in harm's way and give potential for the defense to take it away from him. And that's why we saw them in the playoff push at some point. We saw Kyler Murray before he tweaked his injuries and had problems with his lower body. We saw him in the MVP race. I expect him to be at least in the top 10 and competing for an MVP award. That is the next step in his progression, and I think that he can do it. He was the number 1 overall pick. I think that is what is going to improve the Cardinals more than anything, Kyler Murray's progression. Is the coaching staff holding him back? I think we are going to know the answer to that question for sure, 100% without a doubt, probably by about week 10 this year.
I do have my concerns about his health, right? Because it's just the style of football he plays, and we saw that because they were on a playoff trajectory last year, and the injuries hindered them. Let's get to our highlighted players, and I went with Old Man Watt, right? So here's the thing. J.J. Watt, going to be a Hall of Famer, all-time great, whatever. But what has he really ever brought to a team that won? Like, my greatest memory of J.J. Watt will be him walking in on Monday night in a Letterman jacket and then getting stomped out by the Patriots. Or does anybody, am I having that same memory correctly that the rest of the world can share with me? Where he was like, he was putting it out there. There's a lot of bravado. I enjoy that about him. I still think he can be effective. But, like, to be excited that he's going to be, like, going to put you into some sort of playoff format, I just don't see that. You can't convince me that he's the answer. Like, he can be a nice piece that maybe makes a big play, but how many more of those does he have in him? Those big sack fumbles, picking it up and running it to the house. The guy is wrapped in tape and bandages and braces. I love him. When I saw him do that box jump, I was like, there's no way a man that big should be able to stand flat-footed and jump onto a stack of boxes that high. I just don't know if that same guy in that viral video is going to be playing on Sundays.
Yeah, I can see it.
How many boxes do you jump on Sunday?
You don't jump on him, but I'm saying that athleticism, that player that we saw, I haven't seen him for like 4 or 5 injuries now.
Oh yeah, I mean, he'll never be what he was in his prime. I mean, the question is can he be productive as the second pass rusher on a team, which is what he should see himself as this year. With Chandler Jones coming back, even though Chandler Jones is coming back from a major injury. Let's hope that goes smoothly. I chose Isaiah Simmons because this defense is kind of full of playmakers sneakily. People don't really see it. They just drafted Zavin Collins, who is known for his playmaking ability and athleticism. They've had Budda Baker, and they re-signed him and brought him back. And, of course, Byron Murphy outside. He's been a budding corner. Looking to see him take the next step in his development as well. I think Isaiah Simmons is the final guy that you can use to cover tight end. You could throw him outside and cover wide receiver. He can come in and play linebacker in the box if they need him to. And he can kind of do it all. He's a versatile guy. Reminds me of Derwin James, maybe not quite on the level, depending on how Derwin James heals from his own injuries. But for a lot of the reasons that I'm a big fan of Derwin James, I'm a fan of Isaiah Sims. I also think he's rocking the number 3 or number 9. I'm not sure. He's not wearing 48 this year, so that excites me, seeing single digits on defense.
Yeah, also 48. Come on. What is he, a long snapper?
Exactly.
He's going to go cover those punts now. Yeah. I picked Rondell Moore as mine. He's not wearing number 85 either this year. He just switched it to number 4, I believe. So that's why it was kind of throwing me off when I was looking at the graphic. But yeah, Rondell Moore. Okay, we all know Hopkins is there, right? We all know what Hopkins can do. But what else has the other wide receivers done? Even Larry Fitzgerald, as great as he was, wasn't a great number 2 over there helping him out. Rondell Moore is getting a lot of hype, a lot of talk. Everybody's talking about how great he's doing in the preseason, ready to go down there. They have A.J. Green and they have Christian Kirk, but Rondell Moore, they even have Andy Isabella. They have a great wide receiving core, but they haven't had one guy that steps up to be that number 2 to take a lot of the pressure off of DeAndre Hopkins. You saw it last year. DeAndre Hopkins had that miracle Hail Mary catch, and how many people around him? Like 4 or 5 people. Like that's all. Nobody else scared him on that offense because that's all they go around is Hopkins. And if you look at Hopkins' numbers, yeah, he has the yards, but the touchdowns aren't there. It's like, what do you have? 7 touchdowns, I believe, last year. Wouldn't you want more from a star wide receiver? So if Rondell Moore could be that target in the red zone and take a little bit more, I think Arizona's going to help out. And you're going to stop Kyler Murray from taking those big hits as well when you're taking another guy to defend somebody else.
Yeah, and his low touchdowns just come from Kyler Murray rushing for 12, 13, 15 touchdowns a year. It's actually insane. This guy takes off more often than not in the red zone.
Well, he started off as one. Okay, if you want to talk about fantasy, like last year, Kyler Murray was the number 1 fantasy quarterback for at least 10 weeks of the start of the 10 weeks. And then that offense went downhill. Kyler Murray, like you said, when he gets down to the red zone, he wants to run the ball. And there's nothing wrong against it, but you're putting your body on the line. Use your 2 wide receivers. Use them. Use these weapons now. And that's what I want to see out of it.
Especially when it's D-Hop.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's going up and getting the ball over 3 players. You can trust him on a fade route and single coverage. I would look there every time before I put my body at harm's risk. I did read an article where they were talking about the defensive backs. You know, after I think it was Butler retired, like just out of nowhere, they lost Patrick Peterson. It was a fantasy article, and they were talking about that you're going to get plus matchups with your top receivers against them all year long. So it'll be interesting to see that portion of the defense. I believe we are going to switch to the Los Angeles Rams.
Are going to LA.
Here. Going to LA. Let's get these key departures and additions up.
Our backyard. So here's the key departures, and I'll go more in depth with my take later. But Troy Hill, a guy who's been a big contributor to this defense last year, the number 1 defense in football, I believe, last year. Number 2, John Johnson. He's been on this team for a couple of years, got his big contract. He's heading to Cleveland as well with Hill. Jared Goff, their former number 1 overall pick. Don't want to call him a bust, but he's a bust. He's heading to Detroit to help them out. Michael Brockers is also heading to Detroit. And then Gerald Everett, one of Tony's guys in fantasy, is in Seattle now. But key additions. They add Matthew Stafford, who's coming in from Detroit. A lot of Detroit switching going on here. Deshaun Jackson, the veteran wide receiver, is the wide receiver 3, slot receiver style guy in this receiving group. Sony Michel, kind of a late in free agency add via trade from the New England Patriots. And they drafted Tutu Atwell with their 2nd round pick. They didn't have a 1st round pick. So that's kind of their youth that's coming in that they're kind of relying on to maybe take some pointers from Deshaun Jackson and fill his shoes as Deshaun Jackson ages. 10-6 last year, came in 2nd. LA Rams. Here's the key departures and additions.
I'm with it. I think obviously the Matt Stafford thing is huge, but we'll see the defense. They lose their defensive coordinator to the Chargers, and they lose those 2 safeties in the middle, right? So it's going to be an interesting ride for them. The thing that I was going to open up the show with was that, like, by the end of the season, we could be looking at Russell Wilson being the only quarterback in this division who's won a playoff game. Like, because if Trey Lance is starting and Kyler Murray's starting and Matt Stafford is starting, like, Russell Wilson is then the only quarterback in this division who has won a playoff game. I do have a lot of faith in this acquisition, Matt Stafford. A lot of times when you would watch the highlights, in the past, there would be, and I don't even know what it's called, Mike, maybe you can help out, be a rollout. They get the, fake the run that way. They roll out and two receivers are coming. You got one high, one low. Almost every time it looked like Jared Goff was throwing on the run to the shorter wide receiver. Sometimes he'd be more covered than the guy further down the field. That won't be a problem of arm strength with Matthew Stafford. He hits that rollout and he has Cooper Kupp or Robert Woods a little bit further downfield, or Van Jefferson, or he gets in and wears a tutu. I just want tutu to be good so that we can have fun with that all year. Like Matt Stafford in a tutu. Like, it'll be fun to see that combination work out. I'm not cheering for the Rams, but I do think they are going to be good. Joe, what do you got on the Rams?
Of course, you got to like the Matthew Stafford acquisition. You got to, if he stays 100% healthy and doesn't take the big hits that he was taking in Detroit, which he shouldn't because he had so many weapons here, and that's the difference between Los Angeles and Detroit. He finally has weapons that he can get rid of the ball. Like Matthew Stafford to Cooper Kupp, we should be hearing that all season long, right? That should be going off all year. You kind of worry about the running back situation because, with Cam Akers going down, and now they have Darrell Henderson, who did good last year. I'm hoping that Sony Michel picks that offense up pretty quick and gets in there. Defense, I'm with you, Tony, on the defense. I'm a little bit down on the defense. We all know how great they were, but I'm a little bit down on the secondary and the linebacker position because how many off seasons can you go and lose great defensive players to free agency? They lost them last year, and then they're losing them. They lost more again this year. How many key players can you continue to lose and continue to win at that high level? It's going to be very tough. Mike and I went to the training camp of the Rams, and both of us looked at each other and said, hey, these Rams DBs can get beat, and they were getting beat pretty good. And I mean, is that by their own wide receivers? Yes, it was by their own wide receivers who are pretty damn good themselves. But it was something that caught our eye that the secondary of the Rams didn't look as good as they have in the past. And like you said, they did lose their defensive coach. Does that mean that he was the main play caller and he did everything for them? We'll find out. We'll find out how much he meant to them.
I originally had the Rams as my Super Bowl pick, but I didn't want to put it out because I wanted to really think about it. And then especially when we said we were going to go to the camp, I was going to go and give it time before I actually came out with it. And I've actually changed my mind. Looking at losing your free safety, no matter how good, you can have a Pro Bowler, all-pro guy at every other spot on the field. If your free safety blows his coverage, it's a touchdown every single time, no matter what. So losing your free safety, John Johnson, losing your defensive coordinator like that, and then Troy Hill, he's a guy that can follow around slot receivers and guard them. He's big enough to kind of take on tight ends when they needed him to. He was a versatile DB, and he's going to be great in Cleveland, I think, helping them out a ton. So losing those guys, now look at what they brought in. Other than Matthew Stafford, nothing crazy came in. Their receivers are good, but I'm not willing to go further than saying good. And I noticed that when we were there, I was like, wait a minute. Robert Woods is the number one receiver on this team, and I don't know if Robert Woods, to me, is a top 20 receiver in the entire NFL. So I do agree that they have two guys that are above average or even good at wide receiver, but do they have a true wide receiver one on this team? No. Would I take Kenny Galladay? Of course, I take Megatron. Just thinking of receivers that Matthew Stafford's had before, maybe even Marvin Jones in his prime. I mean, that's kind of tough against Robert Woods, I guess. Cooper Kupp's obviously the slot guy. I don't think that this receiving core and the weapons, especially losing Cam Akers, is as good as I initially thought after going to camp.
Yeah, and I think we could see an emergence of Van Jefferson this year, right? Like Stafford definitely will spread the ball around as long as Megatron's not on the field. He only had eyes for Calvin, and that's because he was it's a dumb joke. Skip it. Let's get into the highlighted players, and I'll finish my thought. I'm sorry, I'm editing myself. I'm in a shit mood. Sony Michel. You lose Cam Akers in the preseason, and this was a major hit. And I have a soft spot in my heart for the Detroit Lions and their fan base. My grandfather, big part of my life, has been a Lions fan for 60 years. And so I would always we talk about the Lions, whatever. I was excited for him to play for an organization that has a good offensive line and a good defense and good head coaching and stability. And they will go out in the offseason and try and make moves, even if they seem desperate sometimes, trading whatever it is. They want to win. when he lost Cam Akers, I was like, man, it sucks because you want him to see what it would be like for him to play in one of those like fully loaded places to play. Sony Michel doesn't offer what Cam Akers did, but if he can come in and sort of be a 1-2 punch with Darrell Henderson and provide a running game that is some sort of a threat so that Stafford can really just light it up with, like Mike said, good receivers, not great receivers. The guy that I was going to throw out, Mike, was T. Higgins. Like, if you could have a young T. Higgins or Robert Woods, like, Higgins seems more dynamic. Like, he'd be the most dynamic player on that team. But I also, like, have a soft spot. Love T. Higgins. Joe, talk about the your highlighted player here.
Jalen Ramsey, of course. Like I just talked about what I think is the weakness of the Rams, and that's that secondary. And Jalen Ramsey is part of that secondary. He is a shutdown cornerback, but as well, Mike and I saw at the Rams training camp, and a lot of people are reporting now, is Jalen Ramsey isn't staying stationary. He isn't staying on one side of the ball. He is moving around. He's moving to safety. He's moving to linebacker. Mike and I saw him all the way up close to the line of scrimmage around DN and blitzing, shutting down one side of that. But he was the main thing when he came up and he was on that line and he blitzed. It opened up that secondary for a lot. But I think Jalen Ramsey is such a big playmaker. He gets into people's heads. He shuts down receivers when he wants to. He was calling out Robert Woods at practice. He was calling out these number one guys because he wanted the reps. He wants to be the best guy. And I think he makes or breaks this defense because as the captain, when he gets into somebody's head and he shuts them down, it just builds up the rest of the defense. So I'm going with Jalen Ramsey as my highlighted player because he's had a lot of work cut out for him with the rest of the secondary.
And he was shutting those guys down. He would call them out and then shut them down. So whatever juice Hunter Renfrow has there in Las Vegas from that joint scrimmage, you might want to share it with his fellow wide receivers, especially for the Raiders because they need some help there. But we won't talk about that. I chose Taylor Rapp because it doesn't matter if Jalen Ramsey locks down DK Metcalf. Ty Lockett and Gerald Everett are coming up the seam, and John Johnson will lock that down. But will Taylor Rapp, a career backup, come in and produce at the same level that John Johnson, a Pro Bowler last year, a guy who probably reached into the top 10 when it comes to safeties in the league last year, is he going to produce at that level to keep this defense and this secondary intact? We saw Troy Hill leaving, so Darius Williams is going to have to step up a ton more. And it may not even be Taylor Rapp. Whoever is the starting safety of this team has to come in and put John Johnson level production, and I don't know if I believe in them, so I've chosen as my highlight player to try and prove me wrong.
Prove him wrong!
I'm in for it. He looks good in his uniform. Like, he looks like a good football player. You know, like sometimes you just see guys and you're like, oh, okay, it looks like he's going to be good. That's not always the case. Sometimes they suck. We are moving on to our final team in this division, which is the Seattle Seahawks and Russell Wilson. At one point, there was a little bit of rumor that this team might not look the same. And there's one that could be on the additions, even though he was already on the team. But I'll let Mike take over from here.
Yeah, so here's the key departures and key additions. And let me know if I missed any, by the way, guys. So just if I ever miss any and you guys think of them, just throw them out there because I sometimes miss a few guys. But anyways, key departures for the defending NFC champion Seattle Seahawks. A lot of them, and some important players in this team, especially on defense. But Griffin obviously is leaving. He's heading to Jacksonville to help them out. KJ Wright, also a Las Vegas Raider. You just like sniping people from the NFC West, don't you, Joe? Jacob Hollister is going to be the guy that's going to help out Knox there in Buffalo in the tight end duties. Greg Olsen, I believe, just straight up retired or just isn't signed anyone. Same thing with Mike Upati, who's been a long-time Seahawk. And then Bruce Irvin, another guy he's been injured, but long-time Seahawk. He's on his way out as well. And then when you look down at the key additions, they got Gabe Jackson from the Raiders to help out the offensive line a little bit. They picked up Gerald Everett, as we mentioned before. And Dwayne Eskridge is their second round and only draft pick really close to the front. I'm excited to see what he does just because he's got some good route running skills. We'll see. But that's the key additions. That's the key departures. Kind of a quiet offseason for Seattle, other than the Russell Wilson rumors, obviously.
Yeah,
I was gonna say, it wasn't that quiet.
They didn't have any draft picks like for the first 2 days or day and a half or whatever it was in the draft. And I'm excited to see if Eskridge can take advantage of playing with Russell Wilson. But on the additions graphic, I would have been fine with you throwing Russell Wilson in there because that is a major addition. Like when he said, I don't want to leave. I'm not requesting a trade, but I heard Miami and Las Vegas and whatever, they're nice places to live during the football season. It's like, bro, you're saying you don't want to be traded, yet you're putting out a list of places that you wouldn't mind playing football. Like, to me, you're saying you want to be traded. So we'll see. I have my eye on that marriage between Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson this year, because it looks like Pete is at the top of that division, or the top of that the hierarchy of the organization and the decision making, and how's that going to work out? Joe,
let me ask you guys something. What has been the problem in Seattle ever since Russell Wilson's been there?
Everything except for him.
The offensive line, right?
Yep.
The offensive line has always been the issue. Like, Russell Wilson is always running for his life, and they continue to do absolutely nothing about it. Again, did they go get Gabe Jackson? Yes, but Gabe Jackson is on the downside of his career. He got beat out. He was actually getting beat out for the starting spot in Las Vegas before they got him. Other than that, what, Dwayne Brown, maybe that's your best guy. You still didn't fix the problem. And Russell Wilson is going to be running for his life again. Did you get him an extra weapon and a wide receiver? Oh, yeah, you did. Good job. Great job. Now he can run around and try to find another guy. Every year, it's tough because every year we're waiting for the downfall of the Seattle Seahawks, right? Because they don't do any damn thing to improve their team, and we're waiting for it, and they continue to improve us, and that's because of Russell Wilson's talent alone. He carries this team, but I don't know. I don't know how much more it could take, because looking at this roster, you look at the Seattle roster, and you're just like, this is like a Cleveland Brown team from back in the day. But I can't use that one because I actually have a quarterback. So this is like a good team. There's a good team, but I'm waiting for this team to fail. Like, I'm waiting for this team. It wouldn't surprise me if this is the worst team in this division, and they just won it last year.
It feels a little bit like some of those early Bronco teams that John Elway was on. There was a few too many holes, and John could drag them to Super Bowls and stuff, but they didn't quite have enough to get over the hump.
Yeah, and if you look at the defense, especially with Griffin leaving, I mean, who is their cornerback one?
They have Trey Flowers and
Trey
DJ
Flowers.
Reed.
Trey Flowers. Oh my, they're screwed. They're absolutely screwed in the secondary. Again, they obviously brought Jamal Adams back, but they need help in the secondary. Bobby Wagner is great still, but when is he going to start to slow down? It's going to happen at some point. They just lost KJ Wright. So the linebacker is going to become a concern. Something that's been locked down for 10 years is about to become a concern also. The D-line, another big question mark. Who's going to be rushing on the D-line? The offensive line is a problem. The running backs can't stay healthy. Other than the receivers and the quarterbacks, this team needs to rebuild. This team is in a stage right now where they are not going to win a Super Bowl. All they're doing right now is continuing to be 17th pick in the draft every year. It's time to send Russell Wilson out. It's time to go in full rebuild mode after the season if they don't go any further than they have in previous years. I had a complete downfall originally predicted for them. I changed a little bit when Russell Wilson decided to stay. I was actually throwing out that hot take. I don't know if you guys remember Wilson to the Bears at the trade deadline, which would have been absolutely bonkers. Obviously, that's not happening anymore. Justin Fields there. But yeah, I'm looking to see if this Seattle team hangs on to that little bit of talent that they got in there, and they hang on to Russell Wilson and squeeze the juice out of his career, or they decide to finally say, we got to rebuild. We're going to send Russ to Miami. We're going to send Russ to Las Vegas. Please no, I'll stop watching football, just like if Rodgers goes to Denver. Whatever needs to happen.
Caden is 100% right. Russell Wilson is the reason I don't drop this team in the standings more than I have. Caden said Wilson will have the whole team on his back. Yes. Have you ever seen the old Greg Jennings thing that we always bring up, Mike, me and you, about Madden? When Greg Jennings puts the team on his back and he's just running down the field. That's Russell Wilson. Every game, Russell Wilson is limping around. He's running for his life. He's making plays. And it's just like in the fourth quarter, they'll be losing. And we're like, all right, we're waiting for Russell Wilson to make that one big play right now to keep him in the game, to win the game for him. And he does it. Somehow he does it. But like you said, I know we're doing a preview show for this upcoming season. Me personally, I would have traded Russell Wilson this year because I don't like anything on the roster, and they need to make this roster stronger.
I think so. A couple of things. Caden is definitely 100% right with that. I'm not sure how much longer that can continue to exist, although you'll see my predictions. Maybe Miami. I think Miami has a lot of draft capitals coming up in this next draft. So if it doesn't work out, Allen's gone, maybe we could see a little bit of a shift there. And also just say this before we get into our highlight players. With Russell Wilson, this is why I don't like just basing MVP on numbers. Should the Seahawks have been 12-4 last year? No, they should not have. Not even close. It should have been like a 3-win team. So you have to factor in they won one of the toughest divisions in football, 12-4, and then I got Collinsworth going, "Oh, he didn't throw 8 touchdowns and 500 yards in a game. He fell behind in the stats. Oh, Brady's not going to win MVP. I forgot to turn in my vote." Get your shit together, NFL. Like, look at the guy on the team that they would be a doormat without him. It would just be, it would be a total collapse if Russell Wilson leaves. Let's get to our highlighted players.
Yeah, and you'd rather have Russell Wilson if you're the Miami Dolphins than Deshaun Watson, in my opinion, just because all the situations going on off the field. So I think that's actually a potentially really good landing spot for him.
Oh,
anyway, yeah, go ahead, Tony.
Pillar of the community, for crying out loud. I agree with you, Mike.
It'd be perfect there. Anyways, Tony, look at this list of players. Here we go.
Robert Bobby Wagner. One of the best to do it, like Mike said, for a long time. He has to hang on. I highlighted this player for a reason. This man has to have one more amazing year for this team. I'm not sure that he has enough left in the tank because he's all over the place, but he is going to have to elevate the play of a lot of weaknesses on that defense, make turnovers, keep up the communication. Him and Jamal Adams have their work cut out for him this year. If Bobby Wagner gets injured, my prediction is going to not look good for the Seattle Seahawks long term.
Wagner scares me in that picture alone right there.
Yeah, look at him.
Terrifying.
If you saw that pregame, aren't you like, oh, damn, it's going to be a long game right now.
I'd retire from football if I looked across the line and that was what was coming to it. Like any of those, Aaron Donald flexing, any of them, I'd be like, you know what? I'm a much better talker than I am football player. I'm going to go to the booth.
Give me
That's
that.
what Greg Olson. Greg Olson looked at that in practice and was like, you know what? CBS called. I'm going to go talk.
Yeah. All right, I'm out of here.
I'm going to get my headset custom fit. Anyways, I chose DK Metcalf. I'm a huge DK fan, and people on my TikTok page know this and roast me for it. I don't know what the problem is with this kid. Yeah, he's not the best route runner in the world, but he runs a 4.3, and he's 6'6", and just an absolute shredded monster. I mean, you don't need to be the cleanest route runner in the world when God gifted you with these things, but I do expect him to continue to work on route running. He has a very good mentor in Ty Lockett. That's one of Ty Lockett's greatest strengths is route running. And when he puts it all together, guys, we are in for a ride. And I don't know how long he's going to stay in Seattle if Russell Wilson is on his way out, as we're kind of talking about a little bit. But this guy is a freak of nature wide receiver. And I think that he's going to have 1,600 yards again this year.
We know he has the speed, right? We know he has speed.
He's got everything.
We all seen the highlights of him chasing down Buda Baker.
He's got everything.
My highlighted player, Jamal Adams, the big guy. They gave up a ton of draft picks for him, all the first-round draft picks for him. He held out a little bit this offseason because he wanted more money. They finally paid him. He's getting paid the big bucks. Last year, this defense was one of the worst defenses in history of the NFL throughout the first couple weeks of the season. It was horrible. Like, you watch Seattle, they were winning games, 35-34. It was like huge games. They were giving up tons of yards. Ken Norton Jr. is one of the you know what? I'll go on record and say Ken Norton Jr. is the worst defense coordinator in the league. How the hell he keeps getting jobs, I don't know. He's horrible. They finally, somebody actually stepped up halfway through the season and was like, hey, we're going to help you out with this defense. They started using Jamal Adams correctly, moving him around, doing the stuff they needed. The defense was a little bit better in the second half, but I think Jamal Adams, hey, get some interceptions, make some big plays, do something on that defense because like Tony said, Bobby Wagner is the only one doing anything over there. And Jamal Adams has a lot of heat, and he's the guy. He's the guy that they brought in. He's the guy that they invested in on that defensive side of the ball, because all that money that they had to keep these KJ Wrights and keep everybody else that they could have had went to Jamal Adams. He has to show up. He has to do something this year.
Exactly.
He does.
Exactly. I like that you threw in there the interceptions thing. That's why I had Jamal Adams really lowly ranked on my safeties list. I don't remember what spot he was in. I'm down for them to just move him the linebacker. Bobby Wagner, Jamal Adams in the middle of the field will be a ton of fun, because I'd rather have the safety that's going to give me 7 interceptions than 7 sacks. I'd much rather have the 7 interception safety. That's my biggest knock with him. And that's why they should have probably put that money and draft capital and everything into the offensive line, maybe.
Yeah.
Might have been a smart idea.
And that was the issue they were having over the contract, is Jamal Williams said he'd pay me as a linebacker or a safety. He wanted the more money. And like you said, they use him up on the line a lot and they blitz him a lot, which is cool. But I don't know. You gave up 2 draft picks for this guy, and you want him to get some turnovers. You want him to make those big plays for you. You better get it done.
Yeah, the money is 2 linemen, and the draft picks is 2 linemen. Go ahead, Tony. Sorry.
They had contract disputes with Chris Carson, Russell Wilson, Dwayne Brown, Jamal Adams. Like, we're talking about 4 of the players that are contributors on this team that aren't under long-term deals, and they needed to get all those done. If Jamal Adams has a big year and he does all of those things, stays back in coverage a little bit more, he needs to get a deal with a wart removal company, because he will have covered up a lot of sores on this defense if he can play better football. That joke sounded better in my head. Mike looks like he's about to vomit.
It was pretty.
You're telling me Richard Sherman wouldn't come back to this team right now?
He would.
Oh, I think he needs to check. I mean, Earl Thomas looks pretty desperate too.
You know what? Let's just do it.
I'm just saying, like, at least Richard Sherman has a little bit left in the tank. I don't know about Earl Thomas.
Well, Earl Thomas actually had something going. He completely derailed his career off the field.
Earl Thomas is a fullback for Derrick Henry now.
Because of that one play, everyone holds it. I have a buddy who's a big Earl Thomas hater. He just hates him, and I hate him too because he's a bad person, it seems like. But yeah, he's always bringing up that GIF in the group chat, like, this is the safety that you think is top 10.
I've heard some rumors, Cowboys. There's a couple other teams out there that could be interested in bringing him in. We shall see. Let's go ahead and get to our record predictions for this division. I will start with the bottom. I have the Cardinals at 9-8, and I think that's enough for Cliff Kingsbury to keep his job for at least another season. And then I will be ready to put the Cardinals over the top. But I have them getting a winning record. It's just a tough division. Seahawks, 11-6 in a tiebreaker scenario. I have the Niners ahead of them. You look at the Niners schedule. They got a last place schedule. They got like the Bengals and the Lions. They got like 3 gimme wins on that schedule that they should get. And then the Rams. I have the Rams at the top of this division at 12-5. Matthew Stafford, I believe, just is. I think he's going to have a great year, partially because I want him to, but also I just think that this is a good spot. None of us even talked about Tyler Higbee, who's another player there that he has to work with. So I got the Rams at the top of this division. As you can see, it's all close, one win or the other, but yeah, all 4 teams playoff contention for sure.
Very interesting stuff. And when you look at it, it's very interesting to see. And Joe completed it with putting the 49ers over the Rams in the tiebreaker. We have 3 of 4 teams at the top, at least of one person's prediction here. So the Rams are winning in most of our predictions, but we see Seattle for Jay Fly and San Fran for Joe. That just goes to say how close this division is and how good these teams actually are. I got the Cardinals finishing 9-8, and here's my hot take for 2021. I got all 4 of these teams making the playoffs. I got the Cardinals sneaking into the wild card final spot just over the Minnesota Vikings. So we'll see how that plays out. If the Cardinals and Kyler Murray can take that step, I could see them winning one more game than last year, basically winning just that extra game that they added to the season. Then I got the Rams winning the division at 12-5, and then both the 49ers and Seahawks being close in the middle of the division at 11-6 and 10-7. But I could see any of those 3 teams winning this division. More likely the 49ers or Rams than the Seahawks. I think with smoke that there's fire, and there's some smoke in Seattle. This might be the year, guys. And you see it in Joe's. So go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, see, I told you I wanted to go a little bit lower on Seattle, but I was like, nope, Russell Wilson's there. I'm gonna give him the 7 wins, 7-10. Like I said, I'm not high on Arizona again, 7-10. I like San Francisco. I think San Francisco has enough to take it. I'm not giving a lot of wins in this division. I mean, 11, 7-7 is what I'm going with. I think San Francisco has a little bit more edge, and they have the easier schedule. Like Tony said, like some of those, you're looking at the schedule and you're like, damn, that's win. They start off the season in Detroit. Come on, unless they lose all their kneecaps there, they're gonna be okay. I'm looking at Alex Robson's. I'm sorry. I'm looking at Alex Robson's.
Ceilings.
Where the hell do you get all these wins from? 15, 12, 10, 10. That right there, Alex Robinson saying that all these guys make the playoffs too with all that. And then J-Fly as well. J-Fly giving the Seattle Seahawks 13 wins. Woo! Woo!
Well, he is kind of like a pseudo Seahawks fan. Like he always talks about them, has an affinity for them. With Robson's predictions, this is what I figured out, is that it's not based on it's not based in reality or any sort of like grounded sort of perspective. This is what he thinks they could absolutely achieve. He calls them his ceiling predictions. So this is the first division where he's optimistic about all of them. If we look at it, I'm sure he has the Lions as like 0-29, and they have to sell the franchise. Like I think that there's like a little disclaimer underneath. He says the Ford family sells to the Buick family, and the Lions no longer exist. His predictions are always wild and crazy. I can't wait to see what he puts on the hot take graphic. Everybody has the Rams at the top. To me, it's a quarterback league. We don't know what the 49ers quarterback situation is. That's why I think there's a little bit of growth in that position for them. And that's why I put him there. And Russell Wilson is why I elevated the Seahawks to where they're elevated to. And then the difference for me, why the Rams are at the top, is because you still got defensive playmakers there. And I have questions about the defensive playmakers in Arizona. So that's how that's my reasoning behind the layers that I had there.
I'm with you. And 49ers fans are probably going to say, you were so pessimistic about the Rams, then you predict them to win the division. Guys, I had the Rams at 14-3 before I did that little step back on them that I was talking about. That's how good I thought this team was off the initial pickup of Matthew Stafford, and then did some more looking, and of course free agency happened. So I just want to point that. I also want to point out, not to boast, but I'm only one Arizona win away from having the exact predictions as the Warzone average.
Browns fan 32 said Seahawks are going to win the division. They did it last year, so I mean, it is what it is. Mine's not ceiling picks. I don't do that dumb stuff. I don't give you the ceiling. I give you the average. There's a floor, there's a middle, and then there's a ceiling of what you should do on every team. And I think the middle for 11 wins for the 49ers and the Rams is pretty good. Can I see them going a little bit higher than that? Yeah, of course, especially with their schedules. I think we finally see the downfall of Seattle, and I don't think they fall too bad, but I put them at 7 wins, maybe 8 wins. If they get 8 wins, okay, but I don't see Seattle going anywhere. I don't see them making the playoffs this year, and that's why I'm down on them.
Yeah, I mean, 12 to 8 wins is a downfall. That's a downfall for sure.
Yeah. But you said this is the best division in football, and if you put the graphic back up, it looks like everybody but myself, it looks like almost everybody here agrees with it. I like the division. I think it's a tough division, and it reminds me of the AFC North days, when the Ravens and the Steelers and all them are beating up on and the Bengals, when the Bengals were a playoff team. Yeah, they were all beating up on each other. This is what it is. But Arizona hasn't done enough for me. Seattle is on the downfall. I think the Rams and the 49ers are still up on the high, and those are the two teams that I think have enough to win it. That's why I put them at the top. But looking at the rest of everybody else is high. Look, besides Joe Skirto, myself, and Brian Bolster, everybody else gave the last place team 9 wins or more, 8 wins or more.
Yeah, maybe my playoff take isn't so hot after all. Everyone agrees.
It's again, in a league, look at the NFC. Last year we had Mitch Trubisky and the Bears getting in with what, like an 8-8 record or something like that. In the NFC, it's the when you get to that second tier of playoff teams, you can get in with 9 wins in the NFC. You cannot do that in the AFC. So we're going to see those teams that are there. This division's going to beat each other up a little bit. Like when people say that the Rams are winning 14 games this year, 15, I just can't see where. Like look at this. Look at some of the back-to-backs they have on their schedule. Like you don't win. You don't win games like that in the NFL where you just like mow through the whole league unless you have Tom Brady and the Buccaneers, which is a good transition to promote tonight. Join us for the live watch party kickoff in the NFL, 5:00 around ish. We're going to start the pregame show. We got Alex Robson and Mike, and then people are going to be in and out the whole night watching football, talking fantasy, getting ready for the weekend, watching Tom Brady slay the Cowboys on national television.
We them boys.
I don't know about slay. Okay.
They're gonna destroy the Cowboys tonight.
38-31.
There's no way the Bucs are giving up 31 points to an offense that had 0 reps in the preseason. 0 reps in the preseason. It's not going to happen. So, also, too, the offensive lineman's out. Did we see, like, Patrick Mahomes couldn't do anything against that?
Slobber knocker. It's going to be a slobber knocker.
Yes, I have 33-17 as they play a little, prevent defense. Dak sneaks a touchdown in late to Michael Gallup because he's on my fantasy team, or CeeDee Lamb. I'll take either one.
38-20.
You heard they cut him, right? They cut Ben DiNucci. He was the guy holding him back.
Oh my goodness! There's a revelation.
Caden says Bucks win by at least 21.
I like this Caden kid. Keep those hot takes coming.
I think if you're a Cowboy fan, bring tissues, your favorite stuffed teddy bear, whatever you need to keep yourself comfortable because you're gonna be crying all night. Maybe a little blanket so you can go to sleep early. Might as well not even watch the second half because it's gonna get ugly tonight.
Well, I even had a Cowboys fan send in a video for the broadcast, and I did not hear the words "We will win" in his video. Just a lot of we're excited to see Dak healthy. Yeah.
SOS coming in here with some Gus Edwards news. I did not see it because I've been on the air for the last
not Gus Edwards news.
7 minutes and 24 seconds. That would be a real
Ravens
shot.
fear that Gus Edwards suffered a season injury ACLs.
Oh my goodness.
Let's get off the air. We are bad luck. This keeps happening when we're on the air.
Oh my goodness.
I was wondering because my fantasy chat was blowing up right now, and I was wondering what the hell was going on.
My phone was going nuts.
Gus Edwards, the Ravens lose another running back. That means Le'Veon Bell will more than likely be in the starting role come Monday night.
What? Oh my goodness.
Okay.
The Raiders are so lucky. The Raiders get so lucky.
Hang on here. Ravens practice cut short. Marcus Peters and Gus Edwards on back-to-back plays may have suffered season-ending injuries. Marcus Peters and Gus Edwards on back-to-back plays.
Just someone hit the outro.
Goodness. Lamar Jackson season, everybody. It is Lamar Jackson season. Carry him to the top. We'll see you tonight. NFL kickoff. Peace.
And we on the radio, coming to your locale. Got into the 3rd round, better bring the smoke now. Step into the war zone. Step into the war zone. Step into the war zone. Step into the war zone.